I've made this video, this is the 4th time. It's because every time I try to get through it, I end up getting so angry that I have Adam Schiff eyes. And it's hard to tell this story without telling a whole bunch of others, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go straight to the punchline for this video. There are surveillance cameras in the community center. Those surveillance cameras never should have been put in there in the first place. Cameras only have one function. That's to record you. There's no other reason for having cameras other than to record and or monitor you. You know, you might think that surveillance cameras in the community center is not a big deal. And in and of itself, it's not really a big deal. But what is a big deal is when 3 or more grown-ass men had the passwords so they could log in and watch those cameras remotely from anywhere they wanted to. That's a big deal. You know, I have to keep starting and stopping this video because I'm so stinking angry. But I can tell you this. If I was a parent in Ozark, Arkansas, and I heard that 3 grown men who are not employees of the city in any capacity could remotely log in and watch my little girl swim, I'd have somebody's ass. If I found out someone had been watching my little boy at the swimming pool, God help him. But I can tell you, the city council owns this. The city council allowed someone to do this in the first place. There's no reason to have security cameras all over that place. None whatsoever. But the city council allowed a man who is arrogant and incompetent in so many ways that that whole place is a mess. But they let him do whatever he wanted to. And Roxy Hall needs to resign over this. Susan Holman needs to resign over this. Rex Anderson needs to resign over this. This is not a little deal, and I'm going to get into the details of why it's not a little deal right now. I've got to take another break. It's just, I have been livid for months, but I know how Ozark is. And I know it really doesn't matter what I say. You're going to do what you want to do, and nothing's going to change. This all started last June when I made the video Ozark and the Truth, and Sonia Eveld had given me a whole list of receipts to look through, and I made this video and I had kind of a list of ridiculous purchases that her husband had made while fire chief at the Ozark Fire Department. And one of the things that I left out of that video were these what appeared to be spy cameras. Now, I left them out of the video because it seemed like it was so ridiculous that it couldn't be true, and I didn't want anything in that video to be exaggerated or anywhere close to being called as, that's not really what that was. So I just left it out. Well, things changed. Back a few months ago, there was a meeting, and Sonia Eveld opened up her laptop and she connects to the overhead projector so that we can see her laptop on a television screen. And when she did so, a picture of Nick Trotter's girlfriend appeared. Well, nobody did anything about that. And at first you might think that, well, what's Sonia Eveld doing with a picture of Nick Trotter's girlfriend on her laptop? But you see, that's not what had happened. Apparently, Sonia had somehow gained access to Nick Trotter's computer and done so remotely. Now, not one thing happened to that. And I made a video about this, and it just seemed like there's no point in even putting it up because nobody really cares. And just for my own sake, I will tell you this, that gaining access to someone's computer without their knowledge is both a state crime and a federal crime. The federal crime is pretty stiff. They can put you in prison up to 5 years for that. And even though there were elected aldermen and a mayor and people in authority to make an arrest, not one thing happened. There was no follow-up to that whatsoever. So I made a video about that. And before I finished that video, I remembered the spy camera thing. So I sent a FOIA request to get a handle on just how many surveillance cameras the city of Ozark actually has. And it turns out they have quite a few. But the one interesting thing about that FOIA request is that the spy cameras that I know for a fact had been purchased by Kevin Eveld were nowhere in the inventory of the city's surveillance cameras. You know, these cameras have already been used in a negative way. Sonia Eveld was spending her days spying with these cameras for the man who was in charge of the community center. She didn't like him and she wanted him fired. Roxy didn't like him and wanted him fired. And we know this because of text messages that were compelled by my attorney to be given up by all the aldermen and the clerk. And in these text messages, we see a really ridiculous story. Roxy Hall gets pissed at this man who's running the community center because he's telling people that Roxy's trying to get him fired. But when in fact the truth was Roxy was trying to get him fired. So Sonia is monitoring these cameras. She catches the guy with his feet on his desk and she sends screenshots to the alderman. She did this more than once. Cut to the chase, the guy was pressured into resigning or we're going to fire you situation. The thing that's just really unsavory about that, other than the fact that someone was spying on somebody and a man lost his job, is that a city clerk's not supposed to do much other than be a glorified secretary. Her functions in city government are really limited by state law. And she has no authority in the hiring and firing of people. And neither do aldermen. Hiring and firing of city employees comes straight onto the mayor's shoulders. The mayor's the only one that has the authority to do that. So neither Roxy or Sonia should have been involved in this. But we all know that's not how the town was being run. In fact, Kevin Eveld was allowed to participate in all the meetings the city had. He was at everything. He was never elected. And none of the aldermen ever said, you know what, Kevin, you're not supposed to be here. You can stay here and watch as a citizen, but you can't open your damn mouth. They didn't do that. Not only did they take his input, but they followed his lead. There's one text message where the mayor cancels, talking about Mayor, I'm going to have you escorted out of the building. I can't even remember his name. McNutt cancels a meeting where they were going to discuss getting rid of this Greg guy because Kevin couldn't be at that meeting. The fire chief of a volunteer fire department in a town of 3,500 people, because he couldn't be at an employment meeting, the alderman and the mayor canceled. So how do I know about these remotely accessed, password-protected surveillance cameras? Well, because Mayor Hall told me a few months ago this story, that on her first couple of weeks in office, they offered up the passwords to her, and she found out that people could log into those things that didn't even work for the city. And you know how Mayor Hall responded to that? She changed the password. Well, that's not taking care of the problem. It keeps grown men from doing bad things again, but it doesn't hold anyone accountable for what they've already done. And that's why I say that Roxy Hall needs to step down over this, because you know what you would say if you were reading this in the Southwest Times Record about Fort Smith? You'd say, boy, they better take a look at that. There better be a police investigation over that. 3 grown men that had passwords to surveillance cameras in the community center that they could sit in the privacy of their home and log into. Yeah, they better take a look at that one. You know in your heart that's what you'd say. Either Roxy is controlled by somebody else, or she's naive, or I don't know. There's no real legitimate excuse for just changing the passwords and moving on. Oh, we took care of that. Oh, Billy Doo and Jimmy Doo, they can't log in and watch the little girls swim anymore. I took care of that. You better have a police investigation. It's never going to happen. It's not going to happen as long as she's sitting in that office, just like they voted to give a city clerk who never did a damn thing nearly $25,000 for the rest of her life. $25,000 a year for working 9 years at a job that she was rarely at. In 2017, Kevin and Sonia Eveld were gone on average about every 20 days or something. My gosh, you can't run a business if you're gone all the time. City clerk's position is a part-time job at best, and she was making $48K. There's something wrong with that. I want to know how she got up to $48,000. And I want to know how grown men had the passwords for surveillance cameras and nothing got done about it. Nothing. If Mayor Hall didn't think something was up with this, she wouldn't have told me this story. If Mayor Hall didn't think that there was something up with this, then she wouldn't have had to change the passwords. Think about that. There wouldn't be any reason to change the passwords. There wouldn't be any reason to be concerned that someone could log in and watch surveillance cameras if it wasn't a big deal. She knew it was a big deal, and yet she did nothing about it. I can't believe I'm the one that has to point this out. This would be front page news anywhere other than Ozark. Anyone in leadership position would have been livid if they found out that someone was logging into surveillance cameras. This would have been an instant investigation at any place other than Ozark, with anyone other than Roxy Hall in charge. If I was a parent in Ozark, Arkansas, I would march myself down to City Hall and I would demand that those cameras come down today. There's no reason for those cameras to be there. There's no reason for Sonia Eveld and Roxy Hall and Marla Ward to be able to sit around and watch surveillance cameras all day long. They don't need to be there. They never should have been put there. And they need to come out today, not next week, not in a month from now, or not in some distant future time that never gets done. No, I would be down there right now. The cameras have to go. We don't know. Maybe it's innocent. Maybe it really is just circumstantial and completely innocent. But you don't have the right to make that call, Roxy. Not one bit. You should have called in the state police to investigate that. You made our children vulnerable because you couldn't stand up to an egotistical turd who was raping our city. He bled our city dry. We borrowed $10 million that we didn't need to build that stupid community center. It's just a bunch of fancy offices for the police department and your ass down there at City Hall. We didn't need it. 80% of the Guerin building's just sitting behind all of that. It's like a Hollywood movie set. Big empty building. And we owe $13 million now because of that fiasco. And here's another little thing, citizens of Ozark. We borrowed $10 million. Community center cost $6.8 million. Where's the rest? Where's the rest? It's not in the bank. I can tell you it's not in the bank. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to do anything. And if this town wasn't corrupt, Rex Anderson, Susan Holman, and Roxy Hall would resign today. There would be a state police investigation over these cameras in the community center. There would be a police investigation over what happened to that $10 million loan. I could go on. You know the stories. There should have been an arrest made when Sonia Eveld logged into Nick Trotter's computer in front of sitting aldermen. There was policemen in that room. Could have just arrested her right then because that's a crime. But you know what? I'm not going to let this bother me anymore. This is yours now, Ozark. I've had to chew on this for months, hoping to God somebody would do the right thing. They're not going to do the right thing because everybody is given a circle jerk in Ozark, Arkansas. You know, Roxy gives former Mayor Sneath the reach around, and Mayor Sneath gives Sandy Key the reach around, and Sandy Key gives a couple old men in town the reach around to make their property values go up just a little bit because we got a new post office downtown, yeah, and then they give some money to keep these assholes in office, and it just goes on and on and on, generation after generation. That's why $10,000 check was written from the Ozarks A&P Commission illegally to Main Street Ozark, who then wrote the check to Lance Carpenter. Because you see, the A&P Commission's not supposed to be passing out money to concerts that are 38-minute drives away from the city and cost $50 to attend. That's not what that money's for, so they thought they could just slide it over to Main Street. Well, you know what? Main Street wasn't supposed to exist for perpetuity. It was an organization that was supposed to revitalize downtowns all across America. Most of them did their job and quit. Ozark still has its Main Street project. And I know good and well that Music on the Mulberry did not occur in the 4 blocks of downtown Ozark, which is what the charter, I do believe the charter of Main Street says that you can't, it's a certain number of blocks around that square that projects can occur and money can be spent. So, you tell me, Ozark, is that crooked or what? I think it is, but I don't have to raise my kids here. Thank God I don't have to raise my kids here. I don't want to be doing this. I never wanted to be doing this. I just want to be left alone. I want to get back to the life that I was living prior to that November 2017 city council meeting that I decided I would go to. I should not be the one that has to give you this information about those surveillance cameras. There are 6 aldermen that make $5,000 a year so they can monitor what goes on in the city. And I know more about the going-ons in the city than they do. We elected a mayor who's supposed to have leadership and do the right thing when confronted with bad stuff. But instead, she looked the other way because she didn't want to create conflict with the people that were involved with this. And that's wrong. And this has to stop, but I'm not going to stop it. You have the information. I just want to go back to being me. I never thought that moving back to my hometown would be met with so much hatred. And I never thought that people who have an outward appearance of being decent human beings are actually corrupt to the core. It's not going to ever get better until you stop it. You can't fix it. You got to stop it. If you can't stop it, I recommend you leave. You know, I've brought up a lot of issues that if they occurred in any place else, the citizens would have blown a gasket and been at City Hall to put a stop to it. I've lost count. I know that when I decided that I was going to make some videos to get all this information out and be done with it, I wrote down 16 individual things that I needed to discuss. 16 things that have happened in this town that are corrupt. Not sleazy. Some of them are sleazy too, and some of them are just plain wrong, and some are illegal. But the big picture here is we have a corrupt community. And it's not everybody. It's a small handful of people. And they've made a cottage industry out of the tax dollars here. And every time they needed more in their life, they just raised the taxes or found other ways to pick your pocket. That's not democracy, folks. It's not remotely close to democracy. It's wrong. It's corrupt. And you have a very limited window to get this stopped. Again, you can't fix it. Not at all. You can't fix people that are corrupt. You can't fix situations where corrupt people don't see they're being corrupt. That's the big picture here. It's like, well, they aren't corrupt. I saw them at the Methodist Church last week. Yeah, well, there's a whole handful of you that walks in those doors that wouldn't know Jesus Christ if he came up and kissed you on the cheek. It's corrupt to the core here. And you can't fix it, but you can stop it. Go down and demand changes. Demand resignations, demand police investigations, and demand it come to an end. It has to end. All right, I guess this might be the last one because the other, whatever videos there were, it's a waste of my time and a waste of yours. You're not going to comment on this because